We should welcome Chow Mambo to the Wine Guy Mike Show.
That's right.
The Scott and Paula Show. Thanks to them for coming on board. And all right. So, okay, now does this have something to do with? Don't they age wine and a lot of this in oak barrels?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
It's been a tradition. They've experimented over the centuries, literally, with different types of wine barrels, different types of woods. But oak is the one that imparts the nuances that the winemakers are after, Scott.
Okay.
Well, and you know, wood is actually, whether it's wood barrels or wood products, has actually been part of this alcohol process. Because if you think about it, back in the day, you know, the early winemakers, that's what they had available to them.
Yeah.
But, you know, it reminds me of, you know, there's a famous beer that says it's beechwood aged, and no one ever really knew exactly what that meant. And I found out it's basically, there's beechwood, like, shavings in the bottom of the containers that creates this desirable culture for the yeast to ferment. Oh. So when somebody says it's beechwood aged, beech is the kind of wood that they use.
The beechwood.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, Paula. What happens are the yeast cells in the wine and the fermentation process attach to the wood and react.
Same with beer.
And do things. So that's a really great point.
So now, when somebody talks about a wine being too oaky, is that from the barrel itself?
Actually, it's interesting. Wines that are aged in oak barrels through the fermentation and through the aging process have less oaky nuances than wines that are fermented in steel tanks, for instance, and then aged in the oak. Oh. They pick up those nuances of the oak much stronger than the ones that have been over there, been in the barrel for the life of the process.
Now, are there some wines that's what they're after? They're after that oak flavor?
It's all about style here. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's a really great point. You know, it's what the winemaker knows that his audience wants out of his labels of wine. And it's trendy. I mean, right now the trend is to have wines that are not very oaky at all. They're still trying to squeeze some of those nuances, like in a Chardonnay. Oak barrels are great for warm weather Chardonnay grapes out of Napa Valley, for instance, where they're trying to impart caramel flavors and vanilla flavors and have a little bit of sweetness to that wine and have a buttery wine. What you get out of a steel barrel fermentation and aging process are bright fruits that are crisp, that are a little drier maybe. And the way I described it on our blog post this morning is steel to me keeps a wine within itself, where the oak allows that grape and the process of making the wine to kind of open up and become other things.
All right. Now, see, I've heard of oaky wines. I've never heard of buttery wines.
Buttery?
Buttery wines.
Butter? You gotta love the butter.
You gotta love some butter. No, I'm reading here, though, because I like to sometimes, Mike, when you're in here, I like to do a little Google research on my own.
Yes.
Consult Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But they said, you know, you were talking about this vanilla character, this earthy vanilla character, which is associated with maturation oak barrels. It says in here that some high-end producers will age their wines up to a decade in American oak in order to get this, because for some people it's a desired flavor trait. I know in our particular case, the listener that sent in the question doesn't like it, but some people really do.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that is a personal desire in what you like in a wine. And it's really interesting. A French oak barrel imparts a nuance of tannin and subtlety, where the American oak, you're going to get that vanilla and that butter. And the way they actually make the barrels, the French split their wood along the grain of the wood, and it minimizes what happens to the wine inside the barrel. American oak is cut, and it releases, I believe it's called xylem cells out of the wood.
Sure. Xylem are the water conducting cells.
I knew you would know that answer. Thank you.
And just in case you're curious, because I got some foresters that listen, and they're like, "What do you mean American oak?" The species is actually white oak.
That's right.
Quercus alba. Quercus alba.
Yeah, I think they were like.
I'm glad you can use that a little bit.
I know. Finally, I get to cash in my forestry degree with my radio.
Exactly. Well, I knew you would know that, but I thought that was interesting. The way it's cut with the grain or against the grain, it does different things to the wine. I found that very interesting.
So, Mike, coming up tomorrow night at our wine tasting.
The MBIA wine tasting at the Student Built House.
Are there going to be any oaky wines there?
Yes and no. A little of all the above.
So I can try both.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
now
you
remember,
can.
wine isn't the only thing that's aged in barrel. I mean, whiskey
Sure.
and sherry and brandy and a bunch of different things.
And some winemakers get barrels used by whiskey makers, distillers.
Maybe a little extra flavor saver in there.
That's exactly right, Paula. And
Wow.
you know, the one thing I want to recommend to the audience is go down to Grizzly Liquor. Aspen has a great wine knowledge, and she can lead you to the wines that you like or don't like. I mean, partnering with a retailer like that will be your greatest assistance in finding the wines that you like.
All
You
right.
don't have to go in there and act like you know everything, because Aspen will help you to learn, and you can find stuff you like. Now,
right.
tomorrow night, we've been talking about this wine tasting tomorrow night at the Student-Built House.
Yep.
And going to be a number of wines here for people to try.
We've got some great wines that have been donated for the event, and Tagliari, the Italian deli, is doing the appetizers. It's going to be a really fun event. It's $5 for the tasting, and really it's the cheapest date in town.
And so really it's $105 for the night, because when you walk through this house, you're going to want to buy a
one of those
ticket.
tickets, yeah.
So do that. See how beautifully this home is staged. And truly, I've been saying this all along because I've been to this home a few times. It is built for entertaining. I mean, this home is almost built for a wine tasting, because beautiful black granite, and marble on the countertops, and there's a nice big island, and the lighting, it's just perfect.
Be great.
So we're
Starts
going to have
tomorrow
some
night
fun.
at 6.
Yes.
Yep, and then you
6
get out and
o'clock.
get some good dinner at Chow Mambo. They've got a great wine list. So I
Yeah.
Perfect,
recommend
perfect.
that.
All right, hey, Mike, good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having
so
me.
We'll see you tomorrow night.